Hello everybody and welcome to Minecraft Build School. Not Build School, Build Tips. So, you may be sitting here trying to figure out how to build better. Looking at this blank canvas, which we'll get into in another episode of Picking Your World. So today I'm going to be helping you with that. And disclaimer, I am not a pro Minecraft builder. This is just to try and help everyone out, give you some tips of what I know, but I would consider myself not too bad. So today we're going to be talking about gradients. As you can see in the thumbnail, I have actually made what's in the thumbnail before I've recorded this, because I was just messing around with some blocks, but I thought gradients are quite a useful thing to know when you're choosing your block palette. So I'll be going into that a bit today, and yeah, let's get into it. So let's start off with, what's a gradient? A gradient is this. Yeah, it's pretty complicated, or Google's overcomplicated it. So if we just go to Google Images, this is what a gradient is. As you can see, the classic example is colours blended together, and that's what we need to focus on today. So this is a gradient. When my best, I'll try to define it for you, is basically just a blend between colours or shades or stuff like that. So yeah, that's what a gradient is. So where do we start? So we can start with a basic colours, which is this, the rainbow obviously. So if we break the blocks down into them colours, we can then sort them from there. So if we break them down into, as I have done here, just red, then basically we get something like this, which is just lots of red blocks right now, but then we can sort them into darkness and stuff like that to make a gradient, which I'll do now. So we can break them down to look something like this. And notice how I didn't use all of the blocks, I only used some, because the more blocks you use in a gradient, the more messy it'll look. A good amount to use is just around 3 or 4 maybe, at max, if not 2. But yeah, here's a gradient, small example, not the best. If you look in the thumbnail, I have done some more examples there, and I'll get into some more of that now. Okay, so here's the last example I'll do. It's a gradient that I personally really like. I think how the dark prismarine transitions with these other, a lot of them are nether blocks now, but yeah, I think this gradient's pretty good. So now let's get into how to use it and what we use it for. The main uses of gradients is like this, using them for texturing. This one only uses 2, but if there was the polished granite walls, I would have used it. I only use the walls just for depth. That's not what we're talking about today, that'll be another video on this series. But we use them for texturing like this, which is good because it means that it gets a more natural feel of it's been worn down and it's a bit more rustic, which is a build style that a lot of people use. This is just a building I built today, maybe for a future video, but we use it for texturing the walls and yeah, giving them some difference. that's the main use. There's probably some more. There is some more like shading if you want to create unnatural shadows. I've never gone into that, but like if you want to create a fake shadow, I should say. And here I've used it for the floor, using lots of grey blocks mixed in together. It's technically a gradient, just not a smooth one. It's the general idea of a gradient. So this is how we can use them. There's probably some other ways, but this I think is the main way. And yeah, so here is what you can see in the thumbnail. I've just put it up on my screen so that you can see a bit bigger. And yeah, as you can see, here is just examples of, I went through all the colours, all the main colours. Black's a bit short as the server I was doing this is on has not updated to 1.16, but that one you can figure out there would be black stone and stuff like that. And the greys would have basalt, but once you've got the idea of it, you can go from there, figure it out. So this is gradients. I'll give you a few seconds. You can pause, look at it. If you want, you can copy it down. Just take a note of a good way to do it. I think that, as you can see, I do this in most of them, if not all, is I do concrete powder of the colour just after the wool, because I think the concrete powder is always just a tiny bit lighter than the wool, and the wool's always just a bit lighter than the concrete. So that's quite a good gradient to do. And as you've seen on the other thing, on my build just now, bricks with granite is a very good way to gradient. So I'll show you some more texturing stuff now. So here is one example you could use for castles and stuff like that with bricks. So it gives the feel of there being bricks, but then over time and with the pressure on top of them. So I'd like to do this at the bottom of a if it's a large structure. You can texture in other stones, and as you can see here, I've only used 3 because the more you use, the more messy it gets, the more out of control, and don't get me wrong, especially with greys, the more you use, it can still work with a lot. But I think just 3 is a good limit to keep yourself to. And yeah. So here, like the wall I showed you before, is another example with bricks and granite and polished granite. I think this is very good. This is one of my favourites. Yeah, I definitely would use this a lot. Basically how you can use it for texturing. Now we will get into block palettes, and this is the block palette I've used for the blacksmith. You try and get a base material that is around the same colour, then you get a contrasting one, which would be that, and these two, you got a light and a dark one, and then you just play around with it, see what works well together. And I know this works well together, that's why I've done that. I was just go in a creative world like this, and you can lay out like that, but I don't think that does it well. Just play around with it. If you do something like this, then it will just show you if it works well together. So as you can see, I think that looks pretty good. Obviously you would add details and stuff to a bank wall, but I'll get into that in another video. Picking which one to use, and you've got your gradients out like this. I would suggest try to not use lots of the ones that are from the same kind of thing. I'd use this and this and this, because then it's only 3, but it's still a smaller one. Narrow it down, and these are all different. I've got one wall, one from the nether and one from the sea. So try to be unique. There's 2 things wrong with this. Well, there's a lot, but colour palette wise, there's 2 things wrong. These blend too much together, so it just looks very... It's not right. You need some contrast. So even if you just replace these with like an oak wood, even though both of the log and the wall would both be oak, it stands out more than oak and spruce. The other thing wrong with it is that it's all wood. If you just use all wood, then it doesn't look great. You need a mix of wood and stone and stuff like that. So if I get some cobble over here, and it still won't look good because shape, but I'll get into that in another tips and build tips. But if you just replace all of this with stone, you'll notice it looks better, because you need the contrast between the wood and the stone and the different materials in your build. If you've noticed that my voice might sound different, I am recording this the next day from this wall texturing. Another thing I should mention about this block palette, which is one of my favourite gradients I have, is lighting. There's a lighting block that works with this, and if there's one, there isn't really one for this, but there is one here. So if you can find a lighting block, add that to it. It works so much better when you have lighting that fits the colour of your build than just having glowstone in like a bright pink build, because there's no pink light sources. So try keep that in mind. Of survival world, there's a good chance that your first house looks a bit like this, and this is a perfect example of how not to build a house. I will get into all of the other things and slowly improve this through all the other videos, but first of all, just block palette I'm going into today is put logs in the corners. I know a lot of you probably do this anyway, but if you don't, then just do. Because if I just do this quickly, look how much better this looks already. Yes, it still looks quite bad, but yeah. Another thing you need to do is find the floor level, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and add a beam there. And at the top, I'll get to the top in something else, that's to do with shape, but adding a beam is good. And even the door is for another episode. But if you then replace this whole bottom, I won't do all of it because that'll take a while, but if you replace all of the bottom, that still improves it. And you just add these beams. Oh. Look how much better this house is already looking than it did before, if you ignore the sides. It can also be used like this to create a nice fade into the grass if you don't have Optifine and you want to change it so this looks like it's the edge but it's not, because these have grass, or what you would be pretending to be grass, all the way around. And with the grass, using blocks that are textured like concrete powder will help it feel more natural and more like grass. Because if I get more concrete powder of the like this, then obviously this would be more saturated, but it blends nicely. Gradients are all about blending. That is all that I can teach you about gradients, and I hope you enjoyed. If you want to learn more, then let me know in the comments. I can try to figure out some more stuff about gradients and help you out. And yeah, stay tuned for more build tips. Bye.